Ashish Ugle, sir.
Sir.
So now I will just share the screen of this our HTTP, and then you can share your screen PPT.
Yes, sir, yes.
So, dear participants, I, Professor P.V. Khandwe, as a coordinator of this 1 week online short-term training program sponsored by AICT on computational intelligence in earthquake-resistant design during 28 September to 3rd October. So, I, on the behalf of Department of Civil Engineering, Professor Ram Maggi College of Engineering and Management, Badnera, I welcome you to all the participants and today's guest speaker, Dr. Putul Haldar Madam. So now I call upon my co-coordinator, Professor A.P. Ugle sir, to introduce the today's speaker, and then we will start the today's session. Ugle sir, over to you.
Yes, sir. Good morning, all the participants. We are on the fourth day of our 1 week STDP based on computational intelligence in earthquake resistant design. It's our great pleasure that we are having renowned personality with us for the today's session, Dr. Putul Haldar Madam. She is working as assistant professor in the Department of Civil Engineering in IIT Ropar, Roopnagar, Punjab. She is having vast experience of more than 16 years, out of which she worked 2 years in the industries and later 14 years, from 14 years, she is in the teaching field. Her research interest in seismic vulnerability and risk evaluation of structures. She also worked in seismic evaluation and retrofitting of structure, performance-based design of structures, non-linear modeling and analysis of structure, structural engineering and dynamics. That means she covers all the important categories and topics of the structural engineering. She is having many of the honors and awards in academics. She received grant to conduct research on seismic performance of shear wall reinforced concrete frame structures on rocking foundation at University of California, Los Angeles in the year of 2018. She also worked on the editorial board as a member of the Journal of Building Material and Structural Engineering. She also worked on the as a financial assistant for the research paper presentation in the 15th World Conference in Portugal in the year of 2012. She received Young Scientist Award in 5th Uttarakhand State Science and Technology Congress 2010 under the discipline of Engineering, Science and Technology. She also received prize and certificate of the Indian Service of Engineers for obtaining the highest CGPA in Master of Technology specialization in structural dynamics in the year of 2008. Now, many of the applications she is having. She is working as a chartered engineer for the Institution of Engineers. She also worked as on the uh, Journal of Building Material and Structural Engineering on editorial board from 13/6/2017. She is also worked as a member for American Society of Civil Engineering. Also a E-affiliate member of EERI, that is Earthquake Engineering Research Institute from 2013. She is a life member of Indian Society of Earthquake Technology, also member of associate member of the Institution of Engineers, life member of Indian Geotechnical Society, life member of Indian Society for Wind Engineering, and also student member of American Concrete Institute. Some of the sponsored projects she is having: working as external co-PI of earthquake hazards and risk reduction on the Indian subcontinent with institutional cooperation between the India and Norway in the year of 2012 to 2015. She also worked as a project in charge of seismic performance of shear wall reinforced concrete frame structure on Rocking Foundation grant of IIT Roper in the year of 2016 to 2019. She also worked as a project in charge for IIT Roper of next generation earthquake loss estimation tools for hilly regions in collaboration with IIT Roorkee with Dr. Yogendra Singh and Dr. Ravi Shankar Jakkar. She is having a huge contribution in research field. She published 7 journal papers, 14 papers in conference, and having 4 books, monographs, and reports. So it's our great pleasure to have our speaker, Dr. Putul Haldar Madam. I heartily welcome Madam to enlighten us on the topic of modeling of unreinforced masonry in filled RC frames. Welcome, Madam.
Thank you so much for this elaborate introduction of me. Actually, I am happy to share some of the experiences and to learn moreover from the participants who are my learned participants here. So it will be more of interactive session than a monologue. So I will encourage all of you to ask question. I think it will be not possible to unmute your audio, but you can actually send chats, and I will try to direct the discussion in the direction where our inquisitive mind can get some food.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. So I'm sharing my screen.
Yeah.
Is it visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So today we are going to discuss about the modeling aspects of unreinforced masonry infill RC frame. Buildings, which is the most commonly talking about the modeling. Modeling means computer modeling. Computer modeling. Why we are all of a sudden interested in computer modeling? There are many reasons. I will discuss each and every, try to touch each and every aspect. Some aspect in very detail, and some aspect I will just try to touch upon. And if we can find some other time, good time for discussion, we will continue with those. So whenever we are taking up some project, the very first question comes into our mind that why need to do that? We need to do that. And particularly today I'm going to talk about the seismic performance of this masonry infill RC frame building. And I will also discuss why it is so different from the gravity load behavior of the same building with the behavior of the same building under combination of gravity load and lateral load. And that lateral load is seismic load. It's not wind. The philosophy when we design for or the behavior of this kind of buildings under seismic load is quite different, and the design philosophy is have certain differences than the gravity load or the gravity load plus wind load, and that differences I will try to bring here today. I will start with these photographs I have taken from internet, and you all of you I'm sure have seen these photographs, and these photographs are entirely describing the seismic behavior of our own country, India. I have not shown photographs from other countries, and we can see, although this is from 2001 Bhuj earthquake, and we can see although the upper floor of the buildings has not been damaged that much in the left figure, but the total building collapsed. And the purpose, it is not livable, it is not repairable, so we have to demolish and reconstruct. Okay. In the right hand side, we can see there is a pounding between these two adjacent buildings, and the damage is so severe that it could snatch lives as well. Similar incident I can see. This is from Takshila apartment. This is also from Bhuj earthquake, and we can see that two identical buildings are side by side, but the left building is intact, whereas the right hand side building, the entire ground floor has been demolished, and it is not livable condition. The right hand side figure, it is from 2005 Kashmir earthquake, and we can see the cracks in the unreinforced masonry infills. Unreinforced URM infill is nothing but the brick infill. We generally construct, these are used for partition material and are generally designed for designers. This is nothing but some dead weight. We never consider these partition walls, URM infill walls, as structural members. So we only consider their weight in our design. But what happens under seismic load, that we will discuss. And since the topic is not only the behavior of URM infill RC from buildings, but modeling of those, what is so special about modeling? Why we want to do that? Modeling, first, there are distinctly 3 different types of model available with us. It can be subdivided again, but if we try to just have a glimpse of the type of models, we have 3: the physical model, the analytical model, and the mathematical model. The very first figure, this is of actual structure, actual phenomena, as I have written, actual structure or physical phenomena. What happens? We want to model this, either analytical model or mathematical model or computer model. In computer model, what is happening, I will tell you. So when we are trying to simulate the actual structure, first accept that it is not possible to model each bond between the reinforced concrete, that means reinforcement, and the adjacent concrete over that and below that. It is not possible. It is not possible to model the damping. What is damping? Damping is a cumulative phenomena which opposes the movement of the structure when I apply some lateral load, and that lateral load, under that lateral load, the building tries to vibrate. This damping also includes the friction between the structural member and the air. It's between the friction between the reinforcement layer and the concrete. It's between the friction between the cracks, micro cracks of concrete. So it's so complex that it is not possible to model each and everything in the computer. But still we do. The first thing is physical model, to understand what will be the behavior of the particular structure under a specified load. That specified load we can understand from the codes, design guidelines. In case of Indian standards. It is IS 890, IS 800 Part 1 to Part 5. Part 3 is for wind load. Part 2 is for live load. Part 1 is for dead load. And there are many codes for to understand what will be the specified load a structure is going to experience during its lifetime. Okay, the physical model is a scaled model of the actual structure. This actual structure. Why scaled model? Why we can't actually test a 4-story full-scale model? The very first reason is the cost, and then the equipment required. The prohibitive cost of this actual experiment leads us or force us to model in the software using an analytical and mathematical model. Even when we are testing this scaled model, physical model, we have to keep in mind while scaling down the actual structure, we have to understand what behavior we are trying to understand. Let's say I want to understand the dynamic behavior. Then if I am applying the lateral load pulses, then what should be the frequency of the pulses of the reduced structure? What should be the bond between the reinforcement and the concrete, surrounded concrete in the reduced structure? What should be the size? It's not the only the scale. That half scale model is only beam sizes are reduced to half, column sizes are reduced to half. We have to understand that under lateral load
5% average तेच आहे ना
कमी होते
तेच आहे ना
हो पण ते कंप्रेसिव्हचे आहे आपल्याला
sorry. Okay, so I have tried to show you the actual structure and then we have tried to model it. So physical model is the reduced scale model of the actual structure. Then coming to the analytical model. Analytical model is nothing but we can understand from these two figures that it has no similitude. This analytical model doesn't resemble this actual structure. In this actual structure, we have bricks, we have cutouts for door and window. Here, analytical structure, analytical model, we need to understand its behavior. As I said, under lateral load, the stiffness, the mass, acceleration, they are playing the actual load in their actual role in their seismic behavior. And here we can see only just by line element, some beam element, column element, I have tried to model it, analytical model. So analytical model is nothing but the replacement or idealization of the actual structure by an assembly of components. As I said, this is beam component, this is column component, but this we understand, we know their behavior. What is the behavior? That means they will experience only axial or combination of, like in column. We have all designed the beams, column components in our 5th semester of BTech course in RC. And we know when we have designed beam, we never considered the axial force. Beam is predominantly designed to undertake the transverse loading, and that transverse loading is causing shear of the beam and bending, incline bending. So their behavior is known. This beam element, column element, it is known. And it must, this analytical model which I am creating, we must understand, capture the important aspects of behavior of real structure with sufficient accuracy. As I said, it is not possible to replicate the actual structure in any form of the model, but the accuracy should be sufficient so that the results given by these models are acceptable, quite with sufficient accuracy, so that using those results we can design our actual structure, design for our actual structures. As I said, from analytical model, this behavior are known. Analytical model, we get a number of differential equations like mx double dot cx dot plus kx is equal to lateral force. M is equal to mass, x double dot is equal to acceleration due to seismic loading. K is the stiffness. Here I have shown how the mathematical formulation has been done. And in computer-based modeling, it is the summation of analytical model and mathematical model. What it does in the graphic interface, we try to model this, and the software converts this analytical model to mathematical model and solve this number of simultaneous equation. This simultaneous equation can be also written by in stiffness form, stiffness matrix form, sorry, not stiffness, matrix form, and solution of those will give me the desired displacement or the force quantity. Force as this beam, column, support, joint, and displacement. Those are the unknown parameters, and what this is the analysis purpose. And knowing that particular element, the force, maximum displacement, what we can do, we can proportion the size of the beam column for RC I'm talking about, and the amount of reinforcement required to take the tension. That is all about design, RC design, nothing else. Only the proportioning of the size, that the length of the beam column is actually provided by the architect. Architect actually, based on the requirement, whether it is a hall where 400 people at the same time are going to be together, or it's a classroom, or it's a residential area, depending upon the requirement, the architects actually fix up the plan. That means the dimension of the room. So length is known from the architectural drawing. So we have to design the component of those building, and by so the cross section of the RC and to take care of the tension, which is the basic thing. In design, although concrete can take some portion of tensile load, but for design purposes, we always consider concrete is not taking any of the tension. All the tension force is taken care by the reinforcement itself. So that's all about the type of models. And today we are actually going to discuss the analytical model and mathematical model, which is the summation of computer modeling for URM infill RC frame buildings under seismic loading. So I guess it is clear. If is there any doubt?
Ma'am, if any participant is having question, they can type
You
in
can
the
please
chat box.
raise your hand.
Yeah.
Yes,
Or
yes.
you can type in the chat box.
It will be better if they type it in the chat box.
Yeah.
I will take up that. And I am keeping it on in my screen. So I think this slide is clear. So why we are doing this modeling, computer modeling is clear. We cannot actually perform to understand the behavior. Yes. Behavior of the actual structure by experiment. It's very costly, and there are no equipments for all type of structure to test all type of structures. So we have to take care them by the computer modeling. But that error, the accuracy should be sufficient enough so that the result can be trusted, and based on that result, we can design our actual structure for any practical purposes. With that background, so we will now, I have summarized the modeling methods. So the modeling methods are three things. Classical method, where the older designers used to apply the thumb rules when there was no computer available only for, but we have to design the multi-story structure. So what do? We tried some basic methods. Those are gross, but they will lead to the safer design. That's the thing. So some approximate method and computer-based method. As I said, in computer-based method, it combines the analytical model and it converts the analytical model in the background to the mathematical model so that it can solve the number of simultaneous equation created. And that simultaneous equation can be written in the form of a matrix, which we call direct stiffness method. And for some cases like fluid, the water flow in a river, the actual stiffness matrix method is not known, actual behavior is not known. So what we try to do, we try to actually visualize the displacement pattern or the pattern of, and we approximate, and that is finite element method. All of us actually have some fascination about finite element method, but let me, it is important to tell that the exact method is stiffness matrix method, not the finite element method. The finite element method always gives us approximated analysis results. So if we know exact stiffness of the structure, we should go by stiffness matrix method. So with that, why we need to understand the behavior of a particular structure? Because it is not feasible to afford such huge economic and life loss. Economic loss can be fulfilled later, but life loss, it cannot be fulfilled. It cannot be replenished. That's why we have to understand their behavior so that they perform satisfactorily under this seismic action. And India being one of the most
हार्ड कॉपी भी है यहाँ पे ठीक है सर
ठीक है
चलो
seismically active country, inevitable. Till date, we cannot neither predict actually or stop this seismic action. So seismic actions will be there. How do I ensure safeguard of our economic and life safety? By two process. One is actual experiment, another is modeling, computer-based modeling. So actual experiments all the time is not feasible. So we have to go for computer-based model. And even in computer-based model, the direct matrix method is giving us the exact result, while finite element method always give us approximation approximated result. Now we are coming to understand the behavior of the infill frame structure. Here I have, this is the two column I have just taken out from a multi-story structure. I have taken out one panel with this column. I have only taken out one panel, and these two are beams, and they have their vertical loads also on them, although I have not shown for the brevity, and I am applying, pushing some lateral load, seismic load. So what happened, we can see the deflected shape. We all know that the density of this brick material is very high. It's almost 20 to 22 kilonewton per meter cube density, whereas the density of reinforced concrete is 25 kilonewton. So it is very heavy, and all this panel is filled with this masonry infills. And being very rigid, the masonry, the displacement under the same load, the displacement of this masonry infill is less, whereas the displacement of this frame material, which is RC, is higher. So we can see that here there is a separation of this infill panel from the adjacent beam column or frame structure. Here above and here in the bottom. There is a, because they are different material, their load deflection behavior is different. So there is a gap between these two. And where there is joint, we can see when we are applying some, trying to push it like diagonally, in this diagonal only attached with this beam, adjacent beam and column. So what it is trying, when it is trying to deflect in this direction, it is pushing inside the infill, in this portion of the infill. And as we know, each and every action has equal and opposite reaction. So what this infill will do, it will try to apply some negative diagonal pressure or tension. Here in this diagram, we can see this is the bare frame. When there is vertical load P, lateral load V, and in the bare frame, we can see this is the action reaction, tension and shear in this beam column joint. But here, when there is masonry infill in between this panel, we can see there is additional shear force, because during the formation of the frame, it is trying to push the masonry infill, and as reaction to that, masonry infill is trying to pushing the or giving the tensile force to the adjacent beam column frame, and it is diagonal. One component of this horizontal component of this diagonal is causing r cos theta shear, additional shear to the column, and r sin theta additional shear to the beam. Okay. So this is the line diagram. Now, here in analytical model, I said the analytical model is the idealization of actual structure by an assembly of components whose behavior is known. But who is going to tell us the behavior? Like today, I am trying to design a very, very unique structure which has never been built before. So who is going to tell me what will be the behavior? The behavior we can understand only by two methods. One is the physical modeling, the experiment. Another is we have to actually understand their behavior from the literature. Literature means books, codes, and if it is so unique that there is nothing mentioned, we have to go for the research material. Okay. So actual effect of infills on performance RC frame. So the actual behavior after post-earthquake damage survey, we have seen many things. To understand its effect effect of infill on the performance of RC frame, I have tried to simulate an analytical model and using a software, SAP, and the plan is given. This is a generic plan, and it is a special moment resisting frame. And I have tried to gauge how it is differ from the bare frame when I have put in these diagonals are representing the infills. Okay, and this is the bare frame. So I have seen the stiffness of the infill frame has increased significantly when I am putting the infills. Very good. Increased strength of the infill frame. The strength increased 2.2 times for this 4-story and particular this building. 2.2 times when I am inserting the infills. That is also very good. Increased force on RC members. As I have shown in the previous diagram, that due to the diagonal tension, diagonal tension, the horizontal component of r cos theta is acting as the shear to the column. And we all know from our experience of RC design in BTech that we never design our columns or check our columns for tension. What we take? We take axial load, compression, and biaxial at max biaxial moment. We never check for tensile force, but under lateral load we can see there is an increase there is additional shear force to the columns, which we have to take care. And similar observation I got from the literature review of post-earthquake damage survey all over the world. And these are from Bengal earthquake, and these are from the experiments of Mehrabi long back in 1996. This is from 2000 Nepal earthquake, and we can see the shear failure of RC column caused due to stirred action of the masonry infill. So it is evident from the literature that is experimental and from the actual behavior of the structure, which I can capture using the post-earthquake damage survey, that yes, this is a very common mode of failure. The additional shear, this 45-degree angle failure of the column, this is because of the presence of this infill panel adjacent to it. So this is one of the major prominent failure of RC frame due to infill. Shear failure due to short column effect. What happened? In the bathroom or even in the ground floor parking space, what we in multi-story structure, what we do, we keep the top few meters open for lighting purpose or for ventilation, right? This is also from Sumatra earthquake, and this is a portion of the bathroom. Okay. So what happens? This portion, only this portion is open. There is no infill. Below and above, there are infills. So it acts with the moment here and here. When I reduce the column height, the shear force increases. It's very simple, and that shear force, increased shear force since I's bar. So it is not able to take that much of shear force, so it failed. So shear failure due to short column effect is also predominant when under lateral load of seismic action. And there is another distinct failure we have seen. This is also we have seen from experiment or observed during actual earthquake, that is flexural failure. Here we can see this is the flexural failure. What happens? How we one layer of brick, then mortar, then again another layer of brick. So the mortar is very weak. When I am applying lateral load, so there is since the mortar is very weak in the shear, so it slides like this, the two layer, and one layer is actually hitting this and causing the flexural yielding of the columns. So why we need to understand these failure modes? We need to understand the failure mode. If I have to make my structures close these possible failure modes. If I can stop this, stop the entire frame to fail in this mode, so it will sustain. That's why we need to understand from the literature and from the post-earthquake damage survey that what are the failure modes. That's why I have gathered this information, and in our design, our aim will be to freeze those. Now, those are practical behavior we have seen. Now I am coming to the design philosophy, how the design code actually controls the failure of the structure, how they can actually ensure the safety of the structure under some specified load. in any structure, they are classified based on the observation. They are classified either in equal displacement principle or equal energy principle. What happens? This red dotted curve is the actual load behavior curve. When we are applying some lateral load, the vertical load is always there. And along with when we are pushing this, the lateral load, it is not the two exact straight line, but to make you understand, I have converted is bilinear. This will be some curved thing, but I have converted in bilinear graph. So this is the actual behavior of the structure. If what equal displacement principle says, if the natural fundamental time period of the structure, that means to complete, if the structure is at rest, then when I am disturbing it, it will go some extreme, then neutral, then this extreme, and then coming back. The whole cycle, to complete whole cycle, the time taken is called the natural fundamental time period. If that period is greater than 0.6, then it is called long period structure. Why we have classified them as long period and short period? Because their behavior changes. For long period structure, we can see that it has been observed that for an hypothetical elastic structure, this is inelastic structure because the load deformation is not following Hooke's law. Till yielding, it follows Hooke's law. Stress is equal to Young's modulus times epsilon strain. But here it is not following. But in this hypothetical structure, this is the ultimate force because of the Fe is the ultimate force or elastic force due to earthquake. And if I don't want any damage to my structure, let's say I have designed for that much force to make it elastic for that much force. So what happens? The ultimate displacement of this elastic structure will be equal to the ultimate displacement of this inelastic structure for long period structures. What happened? The yield force is here because it is not following any linear Hooke's law. So yield force is here. And we have designed for much lower forces. How this is, why yield force is not design force? Why yield force is always higher than the design force? Because of two things. When we are proportioning, I said in design what we do RC, we proportion the section B by D of the RC members and the reinforcement. And when we design, we always know that if the section is required 230.1 millimeter, we go for 235 millimeter, because 230.1 millimeter to make shuttering is not possible. So we try to maintain the size identical. By that process, the size is always given some higher. And then reinforcement again. The actual requirement maybe 10.1 number of 20 dia bar. 10.1 we never give. We always give 11 on the higher side. So those, and then these are from design. And even in analysis, we check the structure for, as if we design for IS 456, what is the load combination? 1.5 times dead load plus live load. And what if we apply load factor of safety of 1.5, and then also material factor of safety. We don't consider the cube strength as the actual strength in design. We reduce it by 1.5 times, and in steel 1.15 times, right? So there are four points which give rise the higher yield force than the design force. That is, one is material factor of safety, another is load factor of safety, Third is the size of the higher size provided of the beam column section, and the higher reinforcement that will give rise that whatever forces I have designed, it will yield on the higher side. So the ratio of actual force to the yield force and to the actual force to the design force is the response reduction factor. The reduction factor, I can reduce the force, actual force, if it is available in the form of ductility, mu. In this figure, I can see this is equal to mu. R is equal to mu. And what is R? R is ratio of actual force to design force. Okay. Similarly, in case of short period structure is whose time period R is and it is just plain geometry. If we try to equate this energy stored in this elastic structure is the triangle, and energy stored in this inelastic structure is this rectangle, and this this triangle and this rectangle. If we try to equate, we will come to know that R is 2 mu of 1. What is mu? Mu is the ductility. Ductility is nothing but the ultimate displacement by yield displacement. Am I clear? So this is, I'm going to modeling, and this is how we classify the actual structure either in equal displacement or in energy principle. And why I am trying to establish a force reduction to the ductility available, because I can reduce the design force if I have higher ductility available. As simple as that. So that is the fundamental difference between gravity load design and earthquake resistant design. In gravity load design, whatever are the stresses because of the external loads, we design. But in earthquake resistant design, since the earthquake is for very, very less time, and although the amplitude is very high, very, very high, but that is for a very short time, and it's going ups and downs. That means it's to and fro, very vigorous to and fro motion. To sustain that, we need not make our structure elastic. We can accept some damage, and damage is good. It will actually dissipate the energy that has been given by the earthquake vibration. Dissipate, but in the pre-described manner. I don't want the actual failure of the structure, but in some way, if it is reducing the motion of my to and fro motion of my structure, that is good for me. And in that sense, damage is acceptable in earthquake resistant design. And that's why it is called earthquake resistant design, not earthquake proof. If I have to make it earthquake proof, I have to keep it elastic. In some very special structure, we may do so for a nuclear power plant and all, but for general structure, this nonlinear behavior is much acceptable. And that's why we have established the response reduction factor with the ductility. Now coming to the code, how code actually controls the design or the desired, or how it ensured the desired seismic performance. There are three main parameters. The first is control of ductility demand. I have shown control of ductility response reduction factor I by I. What is I? I is nothing but the importance of the building. If it is hospital building, which is very much required after earthquake, people will rush to the hospital, then it should be operational. Immediately after the earthquake, it should be operational. So in that case, the importance of the structure or utility, power plant, those are very high. Then we don't, we use importance factor higher than 1. But for normal residential structures, the importance factor can be taken as 1. So the effective response reduction factor given by code is importance factor by response reduction factor. And we can check the clauses in IS 1893 2016, Part 1 2016, Clause 7.2.3 and Clause 7.2.6 on page 19 and 20. So this is one key issue by which it controls the desired seismic performance. Another is control of minimum design base shear through the use of capping on design natural peril. What is that now? When we model the actual structure using some software, we have always seen the time period given by the model is much higher than that of the time period if we calculate using the formula given by the code. So fundamental natural period, it is on page 20 of IS 1893-2016. And the approximate fundamental natural period, it has been given for RC bare frame buildings, 0.075 h to the power 0.75. And for steel bare frame building, it's 0.085 h to the power 0.75. And for reinforced structure, it is 0.09 times h is the height of the building by root d. Root d is the plan dimension. When I am considering earthquake in x direction, we have to take that direction plan dimension. So in x and y for URM infill buildings, so we will have two different time periods, two different directions. But for bare frame, whether it is RC or steel, it is the same in both the direction. Okay. So using that time period, so there is a difference between the time period given by the computer-based model and time period calculated using the codal formula. So how we cap the design base shear? We use a correction factor, VB bar by VB, in the two direction. It has been given in clause 7.6.2. The VB bar is the base shear calculated using the fundamental time shear calculated by your model. Okay, so we have to jack up the base shear, design base shear, using this ratio. That means we have to increase that whatever your model has given, the lower base shear, we have to increase by a factor, VB bar by VB. Okay, and that's how we ensure the minimum design base shear. Okay, the third is, this is for forces. These two clauses are to ensure the forces and ductility. Third one is the flexibility, that means the deformation through the limit on maximum permissible interstory drift. Okay, so IS 1893 part 1 controls the forces and displacement, but as I have, so the ductility clauses is completely taken care by IS 13920. Okay, so if we design only for IS 1893 part 1, then we are actually ensuring the force part. To make it special moment resisting frame, we have to design it as per IS 456, as per IS 1893 part 1, as per IS 13920. Okay, am I clear? So, the first clause is ductility demand, and code has given the ductility demand as it is in clause 7.2.6 and table 9 of IS 1893. Here, two types of, we can see, I have shown the response reduction factor provided for moment resisting frame system, since we are talking about the frame building. So RC buildings with ordinary moment resisting frame is 3, response reduction factor is 3. And for special moment resisting frame, the response reduction factor is 5. What it implies, if response reduction factor, that means I can reduce the actual force lower for OMRF than SMRF. That means in OMRF, the available ductility is lower, isn't it? And what is OMRF? OMRF, as I just said, if we only take care of the force portion as per IS 1893 and I don't ensure the ductile detailing as per 13920, then the frames are called ordinary moment resisting frame. Okay. And please don't forget, we have to satisfy IS 456 clauses everywhere. That is the basic code. On the top of that, we have to satisfy IS 1893 to make it ordinary moment resisting frame. If I have to make it special moment resisting frame, then along with IS 456, I have to design for IS 1893 and IS 13920 both. And why I have to model IS, satisfy the clauses for IS 13920? Even if we design for IS 456, that also provides some nominal ductility. But if I have to, when your response reduction factor is 5, then I am actually designing for 10% force only, and 90% I am relying on ductility. But to have that much of ductility, only detailing as per IS 456 will not provide me that much sufficient ductility. We have to provide some special reinforcement arrangement to get that much of ductility, and that guideline is given in 13920. Okay. So the first point, ductility demand, is discussed. Now, control of minimum design base shear, I have already talked about that. Code gives some formula. These are empirical formulas based on observation. They have given for different type of structures. We have to find out using the time period of the structure of our interest, using those formula, as well as we will get some formula from our computer-based model. And if it is the computer-based model is giving us lower base shear, we have to at least design for that much of base shear which comes from using this empirical formula of the IS 1893 code. Okay, that's how we will design for minimum design base shear. And how we control the flexibility. Okay, here I have also given for your understanding the how we will calculate. Here I have shown that VB bar by VB, and how we calculate the base shear. We calculate the base shear as horizontal acceleration times seismic weight. And horizontal acceleration is Z by 2, SA by G, and I by R. I by R is effective ductility demand response reduction factor as per code. And control of flexibility, yes. This horizontal seismic coefficient, Z is the zone factor, and I is the important factor, R is response reduction factor, which I have already shown in table 9. So I will just quickly show you what is seismic zone. All the India continent is subdivided into several seismic zones depending upon the seismicity of that location. And we can see the northeast, entire northeast, the Himachal Pradesh, and this Gujarat. All these are very high seismicity zone. So it is assigned seismic zone 5. The green one, which are near the Himalayan region, it is in seismic zone 4. Seismic zone 3 is this yellow one, and the peninsular India is almost very less seismically prone, so they are assigned seismic zone 2. Seismic zone 1 is not present in IS 1893 2016. Even in 2002, it was not present, because after 2001 Bhuj earthquake, the code has been revised, and it has been observed that the seismicity is higher. So seismic zone 1 has been merged with seismic zone 2 in that edition. So there is no seismic zone 1 in 2016, even in 2002 version of IS 1993. And we can see this zone factor is for seismic zone 5 is the highest, 0.36, 4 is 0.24, for zone seismic zone 3 it is 0.16, and seismic zone 2 it is 0.1. And the importance factor, as I have already mentioned, for normal building it is 1, and for any important building, critical buildings required to be functional after earthquake, lifeline building associated with utilities like water, power, transportation, etc., we can take 1.5. Even code says you can take higher than 1.5, and it is on the discretion of the designer in charge. Okay, so now I am coming to the third control of IS 1893 design control to ensure the seismic performance is flexibility. What is flexibility? It is nothing but the deformation allowed. I have just copied the words from the code, and it is on page 26. You can also refer. It says the deformation of RC building shall be obtained from structural analysis using a structural model based on the section properties given in 6.4.3. What are the section properties? I will discuss. Just give me 5 minutes. I will discuss what are the section properties. But it says the how we will get the deformation. We will make a computer-based model, and we will get the deformation under specified load. And storative limit, it has said that storative in any storage shall not exceed 0.4% the story height. But the clause is here that when we are calculating the base shear, no load factor mentioned in clause 6.3 should be applied. It should be for load factor 1. What are the load factors? This is in clause 6.3, page 8 of IS 1893. These factors are given. The first factor, we all know. We design, when we consider IS 456 for gravity load design, we always take this load combination. 1.5 times dead load plus imposed load. Imposed load is live load. But when we combine seismic load also, then there are this plus minus, it will be 13 combination almost. So 1.2 times dead load, imposed load, plus minus earthquake load. What is plus minus earthquake load? Earthquake can come from any direction, right? So if we are considering the x direction, then once it is positive x, once it is negative x. Similarly, 1.5 times only dead load plus earthquake load. And the last combination is a bit strange. 0.9 times dead load plus minus 1.5 times earthquake load. Why we are reducing dead load? Dead load is supposed to be magnified. Why we are reducing? And this combination only takes care of the dead load and earthquake load. Earthquake load is maximum, dead load is minimum. Why this combination is required? And what we want to achieve from load combination, we want to find out the worst combination. From the worst possible case, what is the maximum stress possible for a structural member? And we will design for that much load. Then the structure will be safe for any other load combination, isn't it? So this combination are actually giving me the worst possible case. Then really 0.9 times dead load is giving me worst possible case. Yes, it is. we know the vertical load actually increases the stability under lateral load.
Yes.
Okay. 180 kilo column and 1 8 kilo column, to topple them, the lateral load will be required different, isn't it?
Yes.
This is actually giving us the worst combination for lateral stability. That's why dead load is considered. It may happen that we have considered higher dead load, but that much dead load is not possible. And then in case of higher lateral load, it will topple. To ensure that it shouldn't topple, this load case is also given. So actually, I have come here from this, that this 0.4 times 4.4% times the story height, the story drift should not be higher than this, but the load combination will be 1. These factors will not be considered. All these factors will be 1. That means elastic case. Okay. It not only talks about the drift limit for structural members, it also talks about drift limit for non-structural members also, which are actually connected with the city or some motor pipeline, or in case of hospital, there are so many utilities which are attached with the beam column, right? And it says, for all buildings located in seismic zone 3, 4, and 5 shall be ensured that structural components that are not part of seismic force resisting system and monolithically connected, they should not lose their vertical load carrying capacity under the induced stress. And how we will ensure that the shear force resulting from story deformation equal to R times story displacement. This story displacement is considered for load combination 1. I mean load modification factor 1. This should be multiplied by R times and check if these members are non-seismic members which are monolithically attached, can take care of that force or not. That's how it actually controls the desired performance of any structure. This is the gist. Now we are actually moving to the modeling portion. These are the background, right? Dr. Khanve, you can actually instruct me if
Ma'am, you can take a break.
You need that break.
Yeah, we will take the 15-minute break.
I am comfortable in continuing the session, but if you want, we can follow.
Yeah, we will take, madam, 15-minute break,
Okay.
and with the next session at 11 a.m. we will start.
Okay, sure.
Because
So I will take a break here.
yeah. Thank you, madam. But very nicely you have given the insights, very small details, and very well explained. So definitely it will help us to understand the further part of that modeling. So we will again stop here for this session. If before closing this meeting, if participants are having some question, then
Yes, I am here. They can go ahead with their question.
And then we will start for the second part, that is computer-based modeling at 11 a.m.
Yes. It is open for discussion.
Yeah.
You please raise your question. I can see one comment, worst case. I'm not sure about the question. Can you please elaborate?
What you explained that number 4th load combination. That was the worst case that he is saying.
No, not that. That was not the worst case. Any of this combination can lead to the worst case. And for one particular member, if let's say 1.2 dead load plus imposed load minus earthquake load is giving the worst condition, for another beam, it may not be the same case. It may govern by this case.
Yeah.
That's why for each and every member we are considering, we have to check for all these combinations. And
So
to find out the worst load combination.
Yeah. So then for the particular member, we have to summarize from whatever the maximum limits are
Yes.
there for that different requirements.
Yes. So what will be the maximum force? Force means a moment, shear for beam.
Yeah.
Which case is giving the maximum force for beam? Let's say it's shear and moment. We have to consider that one. And to know what will be the worst for a particular member, we have to analyze the member for all these combinations. These are the possible combinations. And I explained this one with the emphasis that if it is safe for 1.5 time dead load, then how this 0.9 time dead load can be one combination? It will be definitely safe, but not under the stability condition that it will not overturn. In overturn cases, higher lateral load and lower stabilizing force, that means dead load, is giving us the worst possible combination. That's why, although this is point dead load, and we can see that there is no imposed load considered. That means it is another extreme where we are checking the stability of the structure under overturning and sliding.
Yes. There are few questions in chat box.
I can't see.
For the drift limit of all load, dead load and live load and earthquake load, or is it only for?
Yes. We have to check that 0.4% or 0.004 times the height of the building. We have to check that for this combinations, not 1.5. This will be 1 on. Reducing dead load by 10%, I thought it would be worst case. Not always. That's why it cannot be predicted so easily. That's why we have to run all these combinations when we are considering seismic analysis. And when we are only designing for gravity load, we all know the first combination is the only combination we check. Any other question, please?
So I think there are no any chat questions. Okay, yes, there is one question. Drift can, yeah.
Yes, sure. Drift can be checked for EQ. So this was the design philosophy and the guidelines, the code actually. This is just how they control the behavior. And then we will come to the modeling part where we have to understand the behavior and for what behavior, how we are simulating the cautions code has given. I will mainly discuss the guidelines, modeling guidelines given by Indian Standard. And I'm sure that in the next tomorrow, I think they have a practical hands-on session by Dr. Vijay Khose.
Yes.
And after this background, with this background, they will be able to learn or they will be able to analyze.
Yeah.
For drift limit check, one dead load, live load, and EQ load. One. This is for one. No multiplication factor load combination in load combination for drift limit.
So in that when we take the factor 1, so that drift limit that drift will be maximum.
To satisfy the drift, yes, we have to consider for elastic. By keeping
Thank you, ma'am.
1.
So now we will stop here for this session, and after a 10-minute break, we will again start the next session by using the link of 11 a.m. Session of STDP.
Okay.
And we will continue this session for this computational modeling with Dr. Putul Haldar, madam. So thanks to participants all here.
Should I sign out?
Yes. Now again in the next session, next link we will use for that next session, and then
the
we will
11 a.m.
Yeah. Just I am just starting that by ending this meeting, and then you can just join there.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.